Qin looked at the experts of the various races and continued, those who have not reached the Daoyuan realm will naturally be in the mortal world after entering. There's no possibility of them being slaves. This is a kind of balance. I'm a divine being of the heavenly Tao, and I maintain the order of the heavenly Tao. It's my responsibility to ensure the prosperity of all living beings under the heavenly Tao. This includes the other races as well. In any case, the human race is already strong. There's no need for me to be biased. Despite him saying that, the leaders of the various races were still a little worried. Who knew if Qin was lying in order to kill their talented descendants, or hold them hostage to threaten them? Perhaps he wanted to completely destroy the future of the various races. The human heart was sinister. At least to them, the human race was the most cunning, shameless, sinister, and despicable. As they thought about it, they subconsciously looked at Chu. In terms of cunning, shamelessness, treachery, and despicableness, he was the best example. If even an ancestor of the human race was so cunning and shameless, how could the younger generations of the human race not be? Chu saw this, and said innocently, if not mockingly, if it weren't for the fact that all of you joined forces to suppress the human race, why would I need to plot and scheme all day long? It's all your fault. The human race was weak. If they wanted to protect themselves, they could only rely on their intelligence and various schemes and plots. There were no two ways about it. Chu felt that these people had misunderstood him. Had he possessed his current strength, he would not have been bothered to do things that way. Qin also knew that the other races had their own concerns. He did not say much. It was not time for the races to enter yet anyway. When the heavenly Tao became known to the rest of the chaos, the various races would definitely agree to send some of their juniors into the world. At the very least, the turmoil and fighting had now subsided. Chu Zan looked at the 3 realms that were about to be perfected. The 9 zones would become history, and would be replaced by the divine world. The chaos was bound to change because of this. Some existences hidden in the chaos would all appear, and the divine world would become the focal point of experts from all 4 corners of the chaos. Even Chaos Supreme Realm experts would make their appearance. Chu Zan knew what to do. Somewhere in the chaos, a powerful ancient chaos god was sitting in an unknown space. Behind him, an expert who had transcended the world creator realm was respectfully reporting something. After hearing the report, the ancient chaos god muttered, Chaos Supreme Realm expert. This scene was repeated in many other places as well, as the news of a Chaos Supreme Realm expert taking action began to spread throughout the chaos. An extraordinary person flew over toward a place shrouded in demonic power. More than one of your disciples died. The demon ancestor's figure appeared. His eyes were calm and did not show any anger. It was as if the ones who had died were not his disciples, but insignificant people. The celestial ancestor sighed. The demon ancestor was truly becoming more and more cold-blooded. What do you think of the rumor regarding the Chaos Supreme Realm expert? His disciples, Ting and Shi, had already sent him messages about this. Demon ancestor said calmly, so what? Neither you nor I are Chaos Supreme Realm experts. Are you trying to get me to do something? The celestial ancestor replied, I'm afraid that there will be great changes in the 9 zones. Those guys will probably all head to the 9 zones. So what? Strength is the only thing that matters. Without it, there's no way to monopolize the 9 zones, or drive the outsiders away. The demon ancestor remained extremely calm. The celestial ancestor fell silent. What if there's an opportunity to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm? Then we'll take it. We'll take it with our own strength. Your heart seems to have wavered, the demon ancestor said coldly, you've become less confident. The celestial ancestor was silent. Was this the case? Perhaps not having improved his strength for a long time did have an effect on him. Was he being impatient now? Even the immortal ancestor is not anxious, so what are you anxious about? When it's time to go back, we'll naturally go back. The demon ancestor's figure disappeared from his original spot. The celestial ancestor was silent for a moment before turning around and leaving. He instantly disappeared into the chaos. On the other side, the celestial ancestor looked toward the 9 zones. He did not speak for a long time, as if he was thinking about something. Many of the experts of the chaos were paying close attention to the 9 zones. 2 ancient chaos gods had fallen there. Even a legendary Chaos Supreme Realm had taken action. All of these changes seemed to stem from the 9 zones. On this day, the 3 realms were completed. In an instant, all the living beings in the divine world received a revelation about the 3 realms and the reincarnation cycle. Even Tao realm experts who were working hard to open up their Tao path suddenly realized at this moment that they were cultivating under the heavenly Tao. Only by opening a path under the heavenly Tao could one break through to the Taoyuan realm. In addition, one needed to pass the heavenly tribulation in order to reach the Taoyuan realm and ascend to the heaven realm. It was also on this day that heavenly tribulations descended in several places in the divine world, causing rumbles of thunder to be heard everywhere. Boom! The heavenly tribulations continued, and those Tao realm experts fell. However, many other peak-level Tao realm experts now understood that to reach the Taoyuan realm, they had to transcend the heavenly tribulation. They had to make their preparations. None of the first batch of Tao realm experts had survived the heavenly tribulation. They had underestimated its power and not made the necessary preparations. Only those with deep foundations and a solid foundation would be able to do so. Those who relied on external powers and did not have the protection of a supreme treasure would be unable to break through, and would perish. In the heavenly domain, the Taoyuan realm experts all opened their eyes. The world had been divided into 3 realms. The 9 zones had become history, and was now called the divine world. The world had changed. Hong Yuanchu and the other Taoyuan realm experts of the older generation could not help but sigh. However, they also knew that this was the best time to cultivate. They had to seize this opportunity to improve themselves further. As such, they all settled down and began to cultivate. The hidden existences in the world were all stunned at this moment. How did the 9 zones suddenly become the divine world? 3 realms. Some took a look outside from their hiding places and found themselves in the heaven realm. What was going on? It felt as if a hand was controlling everything, which made them feel uneasy. Furthermore, they could sense that their fate had become intertwined with the fate of the heavenly Tao. Another group of special existences found themselves in the mortal world, still in the desolate ancient zone, which was different from how it was before. It had become a sanctuary in the mortal world. There were also some restrictions to entering the sanctuary. Some of the special existences were stunned to find that they were in the netherworld. At this moment, a revelation entered their consciousness. They became ancient and special existences that could travel freely through the 3 realms, but were not allowed to interfere with the world. However, they could give opportunities to those who were fated. If they tried to interfere with the world, they would be suppressed or even killed by the heavenly Tao. Of course, it was not against the rules to occasionally those fated ones who had received their opportunities. At this moment, these special existences were all trembling in fear. They were even more determined to stay in their special spaces. In the heavenly domain, that huge head was dumbfounded. How did the 9 zones suddenly become the divine world? Why did the great Tao of the 9 zones suddenly disappear? What was the heavenly Tao? As an ancient chaos god, he naturally understood more about the 9 zones and the great Tao of the 9 zones than most of the inhabitants here. How had such a thing transpired? Furthermore, that human seemed to have disappeared. Did he merge with the heavenly Tao's fate? As soon as he thought of Qin, a revelation appeared in his mind. A divine being of the heavenly Tao. His heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Why did it feel like there was a hand controlling everything from behind the scenes? He was an ancient chaos god. Although he was a little unlucky and almost died, that fact had not changed. As such, he was even more sensitive to the unusual aspects of this situation. It was not the chaos that caused the change in the 9 zones. There was someone or something behind all of this. Terrifying. How did he do it? Even a Chaos Supreme Realm expert could not accomplish this, right? After all, a single mistake could easily trigger the backlash of the supreme laws of the chaos. Could it be that this person could control or change the supreme laws of the chaos? Or he had seized a special opportunity to complete all of this? He examined the fate energies within his body, which were from his status as an ancient chaos god as well as the heavenly Tao. The 2 types of fate energies seemed to merge with each other, and did not conflict. He was a living being of the heavenly Tao and an ancient chaos god. Furthermore, it appeared that it was all thanks to the fate of the heavenly Tao that he could recover. At this moment, a thought entered his consciousness. Are you willing to be a divine being of the heavenly Tao? At this moment, he was almost scared out of his wits. His guess turned out to be true. Behind all of this, there was a transcendent expert at work. Could he refuse? He definitely could not. Moreover, becoming a divine being of the heavenly Tao might also be an opportunity. He had been on his last legs for too long. I'm willing. Which ancient chaos god are you? Funnying. From today onward, you will be a divine being of the heavenly Tao. You will maintain the order of the heavenly Tao with Qin and stop any outsiders who try to interfere with the heavenly Tao. Yes, thank you, my lord, Feng Ying respectfully said. In that instant, he discovered that his heavenly Tao fate had changed. The order of the heavenly Tao appeared in his divine soul, and his very being was undergoing a transformation. The heavenly Tao actually had a few special existences. The heavenly spirit cat, the sky-shaking golden rock, and the spirit-devouring flower. There was also Huang Long, Yi Yujun and Gui Ran. As for him and Qin, they were below these beings. What made him happy was that as long as the heavenly Tao was not destroyed, he would never die. The heavenly Tao could also continue to improve and expand toward chaos, and he would grow in tandem with it. The potential of the heavenly Tao was boundless. Moreover, it was different from the great Tao of the 9 zones. The heavenly Tao was for all living beings to become strong, so that the heavenly Tao would continue to become stronger. The more people who opened up their Tao paths within the heavenly Tao, the stronger the heavenly Tao's laws would become, and the faster it would expand. The strength of the divine beings of the heavenly Tao would also be enhanced. This was why they had to maintain the diversity and prosperity of the heavenly Tao. What was even more terrifying was that even if all life was destroyed, the heavenly Tao would not weaken because of it. It was as if the existence of all life was only to improve the heavenly Tao. Feng Ying was excited. To him, this was definitely a great opportunity. The current heavenly Tao had surpassed the great Tao of the 9 zones. Even though it was not strong enough to resist Chaos Supreme Realm experts, it had replaced the position of the great Tao of the 9 zones and was recognized by the supreme laws of the chaos. As such, no one would dare to destroy the heavenly Tao, unless of course they had gone mad. The person behind all of this had to be a Chaos Supreme Realm expert, right? Moreover, it was very likely that this person was a top existence among them. Otherwise, how could he have achieved all this? With such a person as their backing, even if they were faced with Chaos Supreme Realm experts, there was nothing to fear. After the 3 realms had been established in the divine world, Chang and the other experts saw the supreme laws of the chaos descend. The divine world was shrouded in light. If one looked at it from the distant chaos, the divine world would seem like a brilliant star, shining gloriously. Suddenly, a revelation appeared in their minds. The heavenly Tao. The divine world. It was as Qin said, the 9 zones had become history, and the great Tao of the 9 zones was no more. At this moment, many experts were staring blankly at the beautiful world. Was this world the divine world? Why did the world change? Why did the great Tao disappear? What had happened in the 9 zones? The leaders of the various races, who had been hesitating, all agreed to send their juniors into the world, albeit only half of them. This was a safeguard in case something went wrong, and they were trapped in the divine world. On this day, the entire chaos underwent a change. No matter what anyone was doing or what anyone was fighting, everyone dropped what they were doing and looked toward the divine world. The shock they felt was palpable, and many of them abandoned what they were doing and began their journeys toward the divine world. Something big had happened. Those who had transcended the world creator realm were even more shocked. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more one would understand what this change meant. Perhaps the divine world was where great opportunities and fortune lay. Perhaps it was the key to escaping the change in the depths of the chaos. Countless cultivators made the decision right there and then to head to the divine world. The demon ancestor's figure suddenly appeared in the chaos. He looked in the direction of the divine world and could no longer remain calm. Even the news of the Chaos Supreme Realm expert making a move back then did not surprise him as much as this revelation. That all beings of the chaos had obtained this information through a revelation meant that the supreme laws of the chaos had been the one to transmit the information. It was simply shocking. Moments later, the demon ancestor's figure disappeared from where he was, and the celestial and immortal ancestors also moved and met up with each other. It was as if they had a tacit understanding regarding this matter, and they traveled together. Somewhere in the chaos, a terrifying giant dragon opened its eyes and moved toward the divine world. At this moment, a fiery phoenix shrouded in raging flames also set off for the divine world. Within the chaos, there was a chaos mountain with a forest that was vast and boundless. At this moment, an evil-looking man walked out of the forest. He turned into a black streak of light and disappeared. Divine world. It's just a change of name. However, it's time to go back, or else all of the living beings in this world will only know of the immortals, celestials, and demons, but not me. The giant chaos god also raised his head and looked in the direction of the divine world. There was a look of shock on his face. However, he did not go over immediately. Instead, he took out an ancient door and placed it in front of him. A wave of spiritual power flowed into the door. Elsewhere, Chong was stunned for a moment. Then, his expression turned serious as he took out a small door. The small door instantly enlarged. After he poured in the power of his Tao path, the door was pushed open. It seemed to be connected to a certain place. Through the door, a terrifyingly huge figure could be vaguely seen. "Ancestor," Chong greeted respectfully. Tai ran to the door excitedly and shouted, "Ancestor, you've come out of seclusion." "I'm Tai." "Tai, you have to work hard," the deep voice replied. Tai's face fell and he scuttled off to the side. The other experts were all shocked. The ancestor of the giant race. Who was it? They could not see what was going on inside the door, but they could vaguely sense the terrifying aura it emanated. The other party did not come over. Instead, he looked at the divine world and the heavenly Tao through the door. Chin looked at the door in front of Chong and his heart trembled. The expert inside was extremely terrifying. He was no match for that person. Was that person a Chaos Supreme Realm expert? In the chaos, terrifying existences opened their eyes or ended their secluded cultivation session. A portion of them made the trip personally immediately. Others, like the giant chaos god, chose to observe the situation for the time being, using various methods. At a certain moment, a small light ring appeared in front of an expert who had transcended the world creator realm. It could be faintly seen that the ring of light was connected to a certain place, and there was also an extremely powerful existence there. Some of the most powerful experts even used the pawns they had secretly left in the chaos to pay attention to the heavenly Tao and the divine world. Not long after, a figure flew over from the chaos. It stopped somewhere. A circle of light appeared in front of him, and an extremely powerful figure could be vaguely seen within the ripples. This person was another chess piece of an expert. That expert had a look of uneasiness on his face. Clearly, he was unaware that he had become a chess piece of an expert. At this moment, many experts' expressions changed slightly. They all thought back to the various legacies and opportunities they had acquired in the chaos. It was possible that an expert had deliberately left it behind to make others his chess pieces throughout the chaos and use them when it became necessary. 664 An Unexpected Turn of Events Part 2. Buzz. A leader of one of the 9 zones, races also had a circle of light appear in front of him. It scared the others around him and they all ran away. That person had an uneasy expression. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. He had broken through and transcended the world creator realm by relying on a great opportunity somewhere in the inheritance of an expert. Unknowingly, he had become a chess piece that was controlled by the other party. Now, his own life and death were not within his control. Therefore, the feeling of unease was natural and expected. Chu's expression changed. Could there be a problem with the world that his clone had obtained? He remained silent as the power of his Tao path circulated through the world, silently observing. Once there was any abnormality, he would immediately discard the world. Many experts were now anxious. If there were problems with the opportunities they had obtained in the chaos, then how many people had become unwitting pawns of these experts? Suddenly, among the celestial race's experts, a ripple of light suddenly appeared in front of one of their experts who had transcended the world creator realm. This expert was relatively weak, and almost failed to support the appearance of the ring of light, and his body cracked. Zai's expression changed. Which existence had dared to mess with the celestial race? If this was the case, were the immortal and demon races compromised as well? The answer was almost certainly yes. The expert that was being controlled was trembling and his Tao path was shaking. If this controlling technique was used on someone too weak, it would destroy the cultivation foundation. After this expert's strength would either drop or be unable to advance any further. Would the human race be spared? Chu's expression changed as he looked at Sha. Sha's expression was calm, and there was nothing unusual about it. Ji was even calmer. The path of the extreme Tao was special, so who could use him as a chess piece? Chu hurriedly contacted Hong and the others to see if there was anyone in the human race who was encountering such a situation. Surprisingly, the human race was unaffected. Regardless of the reason behind this, it was a blessing for the human race. As the chess pieces secretly controlled by various experts were revealed one by one, circles of light appeared all over the place, providing those experts with a gateway to observe the divine world and the heavenly Tao. At the same time, if the situation warranted it, those experts could use their pawns as locators to teleport over. Everyone was feeling anxious at this situation, repeatedly examining themselves for any traces of abnormalities. They all inwardly swore that, from this moment on, they would be more careful when seizing opportunities in the chaos, especially those left behind by ancient experts. Experts began to rush over from the chaos. Once they arrived, rings of light would appear in front of them, which meant that they were all pawns. The appearance of the heavenly Tao was too sudden, and the changes in the 9 zones had shocked everyone, forcing these hidden powerful experts to activate their chess pieces. How many of these powerful experts were hidden in the chaos? How many pawns were there? The experts who had rushed over were basically all World Creator Realm experts and above. There were very few Daoyuan realm cultivators among them. Even those who had transcended the World Creator Realm were not spared. Had it not been for this sudden change in the 9 zones, this unbelievable fact would never have been uncovered. As the pawns of these powerful experts appeared one after another, everyone was shocked. This time, the changes in the 9 zones had a huge impact that affected the entire chaos. At a certain moment, an extremely powerful aura made itself known. It was an expert who had reached the 50 million mile mark. However, when the expert arrived and saw the rings of light, he was shocked. He hurriedly retracted his aura and concealed his presence. He had thought that by arriving first, he would be able to seize the initiative with his strength. However, he now realized that there were many terrifying experts who had set their sights on the divine world. Chu Zan looked out into the chaos and watched the situation unfold. As expected, the appearance of the heavenly Tao triggered a great change in the chaos. Among the experts who were observing the divine world, the old ancestor of the giant race was the strongest, and was on the verge of breaking through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. However, that last step had stumped him, and he had clearly not found the right method to break through. If a Chaos Supreme Realm expert deigned to give him a few pointers, he would no doubt be able to break through immediately. However, he was not alone. Many other experts were also stuck at the same juncture. Furthermore, no Chaos Supreme Realm expert would share their experience and help them out. It was precisely because of this that the Chaos Supreme Realm had always been legendary and mysterious. With such a powerful expert backing them, it was no wonder that the giant race was so confident. Even if they remained neutral, no one would dare to force them to take a side. That being said, to Chu Zan's surprise, there was no Chaos Supreme Realm expert involved. Was his previous guess wrong? None of the experts present were pawns of Chaos Supreme Realm experts. Still, Chu Zan could not help but sigh at this scene. Those hidden experts were really sinister. They left behind some inheritances and even helped some living beings to break through and transcend the World Creator Realm. However, in reality, they were secretly controlling the other party, making them pawns. After this incident, everyone would definitely become more cautious. No one wanted to become a pawn and lose control of their own bodies. It was too terrifying. Did the changes truly not attract the attention of Chaos Supreme Realm experts? Chu Zan did not believe it. He was expecting these Chaos Supreme Realm experts to eventually come personally and try to seize the heavenly Tao from him. Was the right time not right yet? Were they still observing, or was they under some kind of restriction? There had to be some sort of reason behind this situation. In that special space in the chaos called the Supreme Primal Chaos Space, the tall and sturdy figure opened his eyes once again, revealing a look of confusion. The heavenly Tao, divine world, the changes in the 9 zones had come too suddenly. In the past, he had not paid much attention to the 9 zones. Although it was the first world created by the chaos, its creation energy had long been exhausted. However, without a sound, such a sudden change had occurred. Even he was caught off guard by this. Noticing how unusual the situation was, he stood up and looked down, about to move. The imposing figure moved, and a few other auras in the Supreme Primal Chaos Space also moved. A voice rang out, "Ju, you've already attacked once. You should back off. I am taking action for revenge." "I will not back off regarding this matter," Ju snorted. "If that's the case, then let's follow the old rules," another voice rang out. In an instant, the power of a supreme law appeared, just like a giant dragon swirling in the Supreme Primal Chaos Space. Ju sat down and waved his hand. The power of a supreme law spread out from his hand as well. At the same time, another 5 powers of the supreme laws spread out and intertwined within the Supreme Primal Chaos Space. The 7 powers intertwined together and emitted a special light. They were not fighting. It was as if they were elaborating on their own understanding of the supreme laws. It was mysterious and extraordinary. As Chaos Supreme Realm experts, if they actually fought, the aftermath of their battles would be immense, and would affect the chaos greatly. Therefore, this method was devised and used when decisions involving them had to be made. This particular decision was regarding who would be the first to descend. This was what caused the delay that puzzled Chuzan so much. Even so, Chuzan's intuition told him that Chaos Supreme Realm experts would definitely make an appearance. It was only a matter of time. It just so happened that there was still some time before the 100-year milestone, so this delay suited him just fine. After he received the reward, he would likely be able to handle the situation more easily. Many experts from the chaos rushed to the divine world. The immortal and celestial races were the leaders of the races of the 9 zones, and they all looked serious as they awaited the arrival of their ancestors. Since so many experts had made their way here, their ancestors definitely were on their way back as well. Initially, there were still Daoyuan realm cultivators who rushed over, but gradually, these cultivators all retreated. The lineup of experts that appeared was too terrifying, and their strength was worth nothing in comparison. This place was too dangerous for them. The sight of those pawns being controlled by the hidden experts also terrified them. They truly did not want to end up like those pawns. Yet another expert who had transcended the world creator realm rushed over from the chaos. After stopping nearby, a ring of light appeared in front of him. It was another pawn. Moreover, this person was not weak, and had clearly reached the 30 million mile mark. Even so, he had no power to resist the machinations of the expert controlling him. As the ring of light appeared, many experts were shocked. The aura that emanated from the ring of light was extremely powerful. It was no weaker than the old ancestor of the giant race. It was another existence that was on the verge of reaching the Chaos Supreme Realm. Chuzan's brows twitched when saw this. When he took a look, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. Why were they stuck and unable to break through? At first, Chuzan did not pay much attention to this situation, but now that he looked closely, he saw the problem. The path to breaking through the Chaos Supreme Realm had been blocked. The power of a supreme law blocked the point of breakthrough. Did someone set this up to prevent others from breaking through? It was likely that there was someone who had cut off the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm for the latecomers. This would create great enmity among those seeking to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. Of course, if they were unable to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, even if they knew, they would not be able to take revenge. The one who set this up was undoubtedly a Chaos Supreme Realm expert. After all, it had to be done using the power of a supreme law that the other party controlled and mastered. Otherwise, even if that person was a Chaos Supreme Realm expert, it was not possible to do so. Otherwise, the first person to break through to Chaos Supreme Realm would have done so and remained the Chaos Supreme expert in history forever. Therefore, it could be concluded that a certain Chaos Supreme Realm expert used the power of a rather special supreme law to do this. Chuzan suddenly sighed. Fortunately, he possessed a special constitution that allowed him to transcend the chaos. Otherwise, he would have ended up like the giant chaos god as well. That person was too ruthless, and had cut off the path of future generations. As for why the rest of the Chaos Supreme Realm experts did not stop him, Chuzan understood. They all wanted to maintain their status and reduce the number of potential competitors. One less person meant more resources and authority for them. Chuzan looked pitifully at the giant chaos god and the other expert. They clearly could have reached the Chaos Supreme Realm by now, but thanks to the actions of that person, they could not move forward. The two of them had probably been stuck at this stage for countless years. Chuzan took a look at the experts behind the rings of light and saw that they were all ancient chaos gods. These were definitely the ancient chaos gods from the ancient times. Only they could be so powerful. In the entire chaos, there were probably not many powerful beings like the giant chaos god. The appearance of the heavenly Tao was a change too great to ignore. To these experts, it was very likely that it held an opportunity to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. Therefore, it undoubtedly attracted their attention. Chuzan was also very curious as to how strong the three ancestors were now. He felt that they would definitely return as well this time. Chuzan was not bothered about the fact that others could not break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. It had nothing to do with him. However, when the time came for his disciples to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, he would naturally take action. As more and more pawns appeared, the weaker cultivators started leaving. Now, the weakest of those who remained had transcended the world creator realm. Seeing this, Qin was secretly shocked. There were simply too many powerful experts hidden within the chaos. Were they the legendary ancient chaos gods? He felt immense pressure seeing them staring at the heavenly Tao. If these experts joined forces, the heavenly Tao would not be able to withstand it, right? What did these experts have in mind? Did they want to seize the heavenly Tao to obtain whatever opportunities hidden within it? Or destroy it completely? Even if he was a divine being of the heavenly Tao, he was no match for these hidden experts. He even suspected that these experts had the ability to completely destroy him. Among the immortal, celestial, and demon races, there were experts who had turned into pawns and lost control of their bodies. Also, since their strength was insufficient, they would basically be rendered useless after this. Yao and Zai's expressions were ugly. A fiery phoenix suddenly flew out from the group. Another ring of light appeared. Everyone then turned to look at the dragons. The dragons and the fiery phoenixes had always been the leaders of the monster race in the 9 zones. Before the heavenly fox race was exterminated, they were also considered to be on par with them. Although the dragons and the fiery phoenixes did not admit that they were monsters, they still provided some protection for the monster race and became their backers. There were too many types of monsters and too many branches. Yao and the others all looked at Long Hai subconsciously, but immediately felt that they were overthinking things. Even if someone used a dragon as a pawn, it would not be Long Hai. He was the son of the dragon ancestor. Using him as a puppet was equivalent to declaring war with the dragons. No one was that stupid, right? Just as they were thinking this, they saw a ring of light begin to appear above Long Hai's head. Long Hai's body was twisting and struggling, as if he was losing control. All of the experts were stunned. There really was a hidden expert who wanted to turn Long Hai into a pawn. Was that person not afraid of offending the dragon ancestor? Could that person be the enemy of the dragon ancestor? There was no other possibility. The dragon ancestor would definitely be furious. If the other party also had a personal disciple or descendant, the dragon ancestor would likely return tit for tat. Could it be that this expert was alone, which was why he was so daring? Long Hai was frightened. He felt that he was gradually losing control of his body and the power of his Tao path. Even his divine soul was being eroded by some kind of power, and he was fighting for control over his own divine soul. Ancestor, save me, he panicked. He could only seek help from Huang Long. Huang Long was curious as he looked at the ring of light above Long Hai's head. He did not want to attack it first. He wanted to wait for the ring of light to appear and see what was going on. Could he also create one? However, seeing that Long Hai was gradually losing control of his body and was asking for help, he could only take action. If he did not make a move, his dignity as an ancestor of the dragons would be lost. He raised his claw and pointed at the ring of light. The ring of light froze. However, Long Hai had yet to regain full control of his body. It was just that the corrosive power did not erode him further. He was panicking in his heart. Could it be that even the ancestor did not have the ability to deal with this corrosive power? On second thought, that was true. The expert who was trying to control him was likely at least on par with ancestor Huang Long. The more Long Hai thought about it, the more panicked he became. Huang Long stared at the ring of light. His time power had stopped the ring of light, but he could sense a powerful energy trying to break free from his time power. It was very strong. Of course, Huang Long was not weak. After becoming a creature of the heavenly Tao, Huang Long became even more connected with the supreme laws of the chaos, and naturally even more powerful. Moreover, the Time Great Tao principle was powerful and profound to begin with. Although he was not a Chaos Supreme Realm expert, he was stronger than everyone below that realm. He was even able to use some of the power of the supreme laws recently. In reality, the 3 creatures of the heavenly Tao were the vanguards for the heavenly Tao to connect to the supreme laws of the chaos. They were the bridgehead. The fact that Huang Long was able to use a little of the power of the supreme laws meant that a part of the heavenly Tao laws had already extended into the supreme laws. Even though it was just a tiny bit, it still provided a huge boost in strength to Huang Long and the other 2. Huang Long looked at the ring of light curiously. When it was about to break free from his time power, he reached out his claw and touched it again, and it stabilized again. Then, the other party continued to increase the input of the corrosive power, trying to break free. The process repeated itself. Long Hai gradually realized something. It was not that ancestor Huang Long did not have the ability to save him, but rather that he was just toying with the other expert. The other experts could tell as well. They were all left speechless. Huang Long, this mysterious old ancestor of the dragons, was really too carefree and unreliable. He was not afraid of losing control accidentally, which would result in Long Hai becoming a pawn. Huang Long kept observing the light circle and injecting time power into it, trying to figure out how to counter the other power. Could he turn that expert into his own pawn? If he could do so, he could stay in the heavenly Tao and tour the entire chaos using the pawn. He did not care for those who were too weak. Furthermore, it was immoral to turn people into pawns for no reason. Huang Long was a dragon with manners and morals. However, this expert had attacked his own dragon descendant first, so this could only be considered a retaliation. That being said, the person opposite him was very strong. Although he was not as strong as the giant chaos god, he was still at the top level among those who had transcended the world creator realm. If Huang Long wanted to turn the other party into his pawn, it was almost impossible with his current strength. However, if there was a problem, he could always seek out Chu Zan. Fellow Taoist Chu, how do I control that person? Huang Long asked. It's very simple. Use the power of the supreme laws to freeze him, and then use your time power to corrode the opponent. That'll do. It's that simple. Yes. Chu Zan finally understood why Huang Long was messing around. Of course, he was more than happy to help. Huang Long had been of great help to him. The reason why the heavenly Tao could spread to the supreme laws of the chaos so quickly was largely due to Huang Long. What if I want to retain the other party's consciousness, but still want them to be obedient? Huang Long hesitated for a moment before continuing to ask. He was a good dragon and did not like to kill. Then invade the other party's divine soul, and plant a seal to control it. Everything will not be a problem then, Chu Zan replied. He had already seen what kind of existence Huang Long was up against. An ancient chaos god. There were 2 horns on his head. He also had a giant python on his waist, with a wide nose and mouth, looking majestic and ferocious. Ancient chaos god, Pan Mang. It was no wonder he had a grudge against the dragons. In the chaos, all python-type creatures desired to transform into dragons. As such, dragons were regarded as more powerful than pythons. Moreover, the python-like creatures in the chaos were more or less related to the dragons. Was that not belittling him, Pan Mang? This caused all of the living beings in the chaos to think that he was one level below the dragon ancestor. How could he endure this? Huang Long was elated. He was finally going to have a pawn. Then how do I go about it? How do I draw him in with the power of the supreme laws without him running away? Chu Zan raised his hand and touched the heavenly Tao talisman. Huang Long instantly sensed it and the power of the supreme laws appeared. Without any hesitation, he raised his claw and touched the ring of light. Pan Mang was rather puzzled. Long Ao was beside his son. Otherwise, why had the corrosion not progressed? On second thought, that did not seem right. If Long Ao was there, he would definitely fly into a rage and come looking for him for a fight. The situation would not be so calm. Could it be that Long Hai had obtained some sort of treasure that allowed him to temporarily resist the corrosion? He had to speed it up. Otherwise, when Long Ao appeared, a battle would be inevitable. He was not afraid of fighting. There was not much difference between them in terms of strength. However, once they started fighting, his plan to turn Long Hai into a pawn would fall through. In order to take revenge on Long Ao, he had put in a lot of effort to set up this plan. He wanted to suppress Long Ao. Pan Mang was a dignified ancient chaos god, among the first batch of living beings when the chaos was created. How could he be humiliated like this? Long Ao was indeed no weaker than he was, but in terms of age, he had lived longer than Long Ao, and should be regarded as the latter's senior. However, despite this, thanks to the giant python at his waist, everyone considered him to be weaker than Long Ao, which was utterly humiliating. The python tribe in the chaos was definitely related to Long Ao. As such, the legends and desire of pythons transforming into dragons was definitely his doing. Pan Mang gloomily continued to pour in more and more of his power. The giant python coiled around his waist, opened its eyes and opened its mouth, as if it was swallowing something. Suddenly, an invisible chain appeared around him. Pan Mang was initially completely unaware. By the time he realized that something was wrong, he felt that his strength had been frozen. Both his body and divine soul had entered a stagnant state. Pan Mang was overwhelmed with shock. Long Ao, how could Long Ao become so powerful in such a short time? Could it be that Long Ao had broken through to the Chaos Supreme Realm? No, it was impossible. In the Chaos, no one had ever broken through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. Even Giant Chaos God and the other 2 had not been able to do so. Those were the three top existences among the ancient chaos gods, and they had been on the verge of breaking through billions of years ago, yet were still stuck. Moreover, when an expert broke through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, there would definitely be some sort of phenomenon in the chaos. Soon after, Pan Mang discovered that he seemed to be locked in a time freeze zone. Time continued to invade his body and divine soul, slowly turning him into a pawn. Break. Pan Mang frantically tried to use his strength to break free, but he was unable to do so. His heart continued to sink. Could it be that Long Hai's treasure was so powerful? The more Pan Mang thought about it, the more alarmed he became. However, no matter how hard he tried to use his trump card, it was useless. He could only watch helplessly as the time power invaded his body and his divine soul. He gradually lost control of his body. Only his consciousness was clear, and his thoughts remained unchanged. He regretted it now. He hated Long Hao even more. If it was not for him, would this have happened? How hateful. Gradually, a small jade dragon seal appeared in his soul. It was as if time was flowing in his soul. Other than the fact that he was still conscious and his thoughts were clear, everything was no longer under his control. However, upon seeing the tiny jade dragon seal in his soul, Pan Mang was stunned. Which dragon was this? It was not Long Hao. Moreover, this small jade dragon seal was like time itself and had a kind of transcendent and unfathomable aura. A voice suddenly resounded in his consciousness. You are now my pawn. You can be considered a clone. If you want freedom, you have to be obedient. May I know who you are? Pan Mang solemnly asked. Huang Long. Pan Mang was taken aback. There did not seem to be such an existence among the dragons. At the very least, he had not heard of this person before. Furthermore, he was even more powerful than Long Hao. Otherwise, this would not have happened. This jade dragon had a transcendent and unfathomable aura. Pan Mang's heart trembled. Could it be a Chaos Supreme Realm expert? The dragons had a Chaos Supreme Realm expert. Why did he not know this? From his memory, there was no Huang Long among the dragons. Then what do you want me to do? Pan Mang spoke in a sullen voice. Resist. He could not resist. Beg for mercy. It was obviously of no use. Since that was the case, he could only think of a way to fight for some level of freedom. He was worried that if he disagreed, the other party would directly destroy his consciousness. It's simple. You'll do whatever I tell you to do and go wherever I tell you to go. Do I have a choice? No, you don't. Pan Mang was silent for a moment before gritting his teeth. Since there's no choice, what else can I do but obey? You'll be like this for the time being. I'll take over your body. As the jade dragon swam in his soul, Pan Mang discovered that a ring of light had appeared in front of him. This was the technique he had used to try and control Long Hai. It could also be used to locate him and as a transportation node. With a surge of energy, Pan Mang involuntarily stepped into the ring of light. Huang Long had successfully made Pan Mang his pawn, and he was extremely excited about this. With this clone, his true body could stay in the heavenly Tao, while Pan Mang traveled the chaos like a grand tour. He would be able to watch and experience everything Pan Mang did in real time. The ring of light above Long Hai's head suddenly expanded and stabilized. Long Hai was so scared that his body trembled. It was only when he realized that he had regained his freedom that he heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he realized in shock that the person on the other side was going to personally descend. Could Ancestor Huang Long stop the enemy? Chong and the others were all stunned. The one targeting Long Hai was coming in person. The other party would be the first to personally descend. The giant chaos god looked through the door toward where Long Hai was. Pan Mang is going to descend personally. The other ancient chaos gods were also paying close attention. The ring of light expanded and stabilized. A passage that could travel through space appeared. A huge figure walked out of it. He had 2 horns on his head, and a large python coiled around his waist. His aura was extremely powerful. Chong and the other experts' expressions changed. He was too strong. Chin's expression was grave. This expert was way too powerful. He was no match for the other party and was unable to stop him. He could not help but look toward Huang Long. Would he be able to handle this expert? With the appearance of Pan Mang, many experts came to a realization. It was no wonder he wanted to turn Long Hai into a pawn and did not fear the dragon ancestor. The two sides were already great enemies. Moreover, Pan Mang did not have disciples or descendants, so he naturally had nothing to worry about. As soon as Pan Mang appeared, a dragon's roar was heard from the chaos. Pan Mang, don't you dare. A terrifying golden dragon tore through space, and its dragons might cause Chong and the others to take a few steps back. The dragon ancestor, Long Ao. An enormous dragon claw tore through space. The huge python on Pan Meng's waist rose up and flicked its tongue. At the same time, Pan Meng threw a punch. Boom! The two experts clashed, causing the chaotic space to shatter layer by layer. By this time, Long Ao himself had rushed over and struck with his claw again. All of a sudden, Huang Long appeared beside Pan Meng, and with a flash of his time power, he moved the ladder through time. Long Ao's claw passed through Pan Meng directly and harmlessly. Hey, what are you doing? I've just turned him into my pawn. If you break him, won't I be the one that loses out? Huang Long looked at Long Ao with dissatisfaction. A pawn, all the experts were stunned. Long Ao also stopped attacking. He looked at Huang Long in shock, and then at Pan Meng. At this moment, there was clearly something wrong with Pan Meng. He stood beside Huang Long, and time power seemed to flow around him. This was an expert who had transcended the world creator realm, and once of the first ancient chaos gods. He had actually been turned into a pawn. How did Huang Long do it? Long Ao looked at this fellow dragon in shock. Long Hai was extremely excited as he hurriedly went over to his father's side. At the same time, he sent a voice transmission to introduce Huang Long to his father. Long Ao's expression did not change, but inwardly, he was calculating whether acknowledging this big brother would be a good or a bad thing. Pan Meng was no weaker than he was, yet had been turned into a pawn. Based on what Long Hai said, Huang Long did not even take a long time to do this. The strength of his abilities and the strangeness of his methods were extraordinary. Moreover, he realized that this dragon was using time power, and at a very high level too. Could Huang Long be a Chaos Supreme Realm expert? Even Giant Chaos God, an expert infinitely close to the Chaos Supreme Realm, was unable to take control of Pan Meng and turn him into a pawn so quickly. The difficulty of killing and controlling someone of that level was worlds apart. Long Hai looked at his father. He wanted to see what his father's attitude towards Huang Long was. Could he really be one of the dragon ancestors? It was the same for the other experts. Huang Long was too mysterious. Before this, no one had ever heard of such an existence among the dragons. Haha, it's brother Huang Long. You didn't even tell me that you were coming back. Long Ao suddenly laughed. It was not like he would lose anything by acknowledging Huang Long's status. The other party was a dragon anyway. If this person was really an existence that had reached the Chaos Supreme Realm, then he would have made a huge profit. Denying Huang Long's status and identity would only bring more harm than good. Having one more powerful expert was a good thing. Huang Long raised his brows. This dragon ancestor, Long Ao, was really tactful. Little Ao, long time no see. Long Ao cursed inwardly. This person really did not mince words. Before he could say anything else, three figures appeared from the chaos. One of them had big sleeves fluttering in the wind, looking quite carefree. The other one was extraordinary. The last one was domineering and majestic, with demonic power surging around him. The three ancestors. Greetings, Master. Yao and Piao hurriedly greeted the immortal ancestor. Shi and Ting also greeted the celestial ancestor. The demon ancestor did not have any personal disciples present. Chu's expression was grave. No one from the human race was capable of fighting the demon ancestor, not even Qin. It was a real crisis. The demon ancestor swept his gaze around and looked at those rings of light. He did not say anything. Looking at the demon race's world creator expert who had become a pawn, he frowned slightly. His eyes were piercingly cold as he looked past the ring of light at the expert who was behind this. Demon ancestor, lend me this little demon. I'll give you an explanation after this, the hidden expert said. He did not want to antagonize the demon ancestor at this moment. The powerful experts who controlled the immortal and celestial race experts spoke one after another, expressing the same thoughts. The immortal ancestor and celestial ancestor looked at them coldly, but did not say anything. This was not the time for a fight. The demon ancestor looked at Qin. You're quite capable. You managed to kill my disciple. If you don't die after taking one of my attacks, then I'll forget about this matter. The people present were all stunned. The demon ancestor was actually so easygoing. He seemed different from the rumors. As for the powerful experts present, their expressions were extremely grave. For example, Long Ao. The demon ancestor was the founder of the Demon Tao principle. He had always been pursuing its perfection. He was overbearing, arrogant, and ruthless. For someone whose personal disciples had died, he looked awfully calm. He did not even seem like he was determined to avenge his disciple, but merely going through the motions to safeguard his own dignity. This nearly emotionless state meant that the demon ancestor's demon Tao principle was close to perfection. If everything progressed without a hitch, once he became a true demon, he would break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. Then, Long Ao looked at the immortal ancestor and the celestial ancestor. The immortal ancestor pursued great carefreeness and freedom. This was his pursuit and understanding of the immortal Tao principle. His state was similar to that of the demon ancestor. In comparison, the celestial ancestor was slightly behind them. What the celestial ancestor pursued was the legendary dignity and nobility of a celestial being. However, on this Tao principle that he had created, he had fallen behind the immortal and demon ancestors. The three ancestors were the most powerful beings in the 9 zones back then. They had obtained the great fortune of the world, created the 3 major races, and ruled the 9 realms for countless years. Now, all 3 of them had returned. The demon ancestor was very strong, and someone who had transcended the world creator realm and was close to reaching its limits. Although Qin was a divine being of the heavenly Tao, he was far weaker than the demon ancestor. Under normal circumstances, with his level of strength, he would not be able to withstand a single blow from the demon ancestor and would die without a doubt. However, as a divine being of the heavenly Tao, he would be defeated, but would not die. He held the halberd in his hand and looked straight at the demon ancestor without fear. You can't kill me. If I was born in the same era as you, there's no way I'd be weaker than you. I have heard of you. Whether I can kill you or not, we'll know after I try, the demon ancestor said calmly. Then come. With the halberd in hand, Qin's aura erupted, and dazzling golden light surrounded his body. His Tao path appeared. This was also the first time he had displayed his Tao path. Although it was his comprehension of the great Tao, it had now been infused with the power of the heavenly Tao. His Tao path was vast, with mountains and rivers, people flowing, and signs of life, old age, sickness, and death. The moment his Tao path appeared, it drew the attention of the experts present. This Tao path was extraordinary. Chang exclaimed in his heart. Qin was indeed the person who created the first human cultivation technique. He was the first to comprehend the great Tao and create a Tao path unique to the human race. If the human race had not been suppressed, and he had not been forced to escape the 9 zones. If he had focused on comprehending the great Tao, his Tao path would probably be even stronger and more extraordinary. You're worth my time. This was the first time the demon ancestor looked at Qin dead on. He raised his hand and threw a punch. Boom! The vast demonic power shattered the layers of chaotic space. A ray of golden light surged against the punch. However, it only lasted for 3 breaths of time before dissipating. The mountains, rivers, and living beings on the Tao path disappeared. Even giant chaos god could not help but look solemnly at the demon ancestor. He had killed Qin with a simple punch. He was extremely powerful. Chu's expression darkened. If the demon ancestor were to attack him, he would not have the slightest chance of escaping. Ji's expression was solemn. What he lacked was time. As long as he was given time, he would be able to reach or surpass the demon ancestor. Behind each ring of light were powerful ancient chaos gods. At this moment, all of them had grave expressions on their faces. The 3 ancestors were considered to be rising stars. However, they had already caught up to them, and were even stronger than some of them. The demon ancestor's reputation was well deserved. Long Ao's expression was solemn. The moment the demon ancestor made his move, he knew that he was slightly weaker. Of course, it was difficult to determine the winner with such a small gap. The celestial ancestor sighed in his heart. He was still a little behind the demon ancestor. Still, it was not by a large margin. He had to stabilize his cultivation and strengthen his faith to catch up. It was not surprising that Qin could not block the demon ancestor's attack. Although he was a divine being of the heavenly Tao and had grown significantly in strength, the power of the heavenly Tao that he could wield was limited. The moment Chu Zan saw the 3 ancestors, he sighed. All 3 of them were indeed powerful. Were it not for the fact the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm had been blocked, they would definitely be able to reach the Chaos Supreme Realm in the future. Unfortunately, the 3 ancestors would eventually end up like giant chaos god, stuck at this step and unable to advance an inch. Compared to the powerful ancient chaos gods, they were considered juniors and rising stars. However, the 3 ancestors had caught up, which was testament to their levels of talent. In addition, all 3 of them had created a Tao path that was unique to them, which resulted in the creation of the 3 major races. In the chaos, another person who had transcended the world creator realm rushed over. A ring of light appeared in front of him. It was another pawn. Chuzan took a look. The ancient chaos god behind the ring of light was no weaker than giant chaos god. He was also on the verge of breaking through to the chaos supreme realm. So far, there were 3 ancient chaos gods at this level. Boom! The fate energy of the heavenly Tao churned, and a figure appeared. Qin's expression was extremely grave. The demon ancestor was very strong. He was no match for him. Unless he could mobilize more of the power of the heavenly Tao, he would not be able to contend with the demon ancestor. There was only one way to become stronger, which was to strengthen the heavenly Tao itself. After recovering, Qin returned to the chaos. The demon ancestor did not seem to be surprised. Instead, he looked at the heavenly Tao. The spirit of the heavenly Tao. Good move. However, this also limits you. In addition, it's not impossible to kill you. It's both a restriction and an opportunity, Qin said coldly. I'm not an ordinary spirit of the heavenly Tao. I'm a divine being of the heavenly Tao. You can't kill me with your strength. The demon ancestor was strong. However, he was not strong enough to destroy the heavenly Tao. 670 Monster Ancestor Part 1. As for the demon ancestor implying that there were other ways to kill him, Qin did not believe him. After all, the demon ancestor did not know much about the heavenly Tao. Whether it's the heavenly Tao or the great Tao does not matter. It doesn't matter if it's the 9 zones or the divine world. Both are just names. What hasn't changed is that it's our homeland, the immortal ancestor said. Since you are a divine being of the heavenly Tao, you should be able to let us return to our homeland without being rejected, right? An ancient chaos god spoke from behind a ring of light. This world was created by the chaos. We ancient chaos gods are the first living creatures of the chaos and the first to enter this world. We belong here and should be allowed to enter it. The ancient chaos gods all agreed with him. The immortal ancestor's words were meant to exclude them, which could not be allowed. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Who knew if there were great opportunities within the heavenly Tao, perhaps even an opportunity to break through to the chaos supreme realm. Since none of you have descendants in this world, and you don't possess any of this world's fate energy, how can this world be your homeland? The celestial ancestor posed a question. Do you really think that you can stop us with just the 3 of you? An ancient chaos god coldly replied. The 3 strongest experts, among which the giant chaos god was one, did not say a word. They naturally had the right to enter. In the end, strength was everything in the chaos. Regardless of whether it was the immortal or the celestial ancestors, they would not exclude the 3 of them. This was a tacit understanding between them. Since they could enter, whether or not the other ancient chaos gods could enter naturally had nothing to do with them. The fewer experts that entered, the more opportunities they might be able to obtain. Let's just fight. Let our strength do the talking, the demon ancestor said. Can the 3 of you stop us? An ancient chaos god laughed in disdain. The 3 ancestors were indeed powerful, but how could they overcome so many ancient chaos gods? The immortal ancestor shook his head and smiled. Not all ancient chaos gods are like you, who like to bully the few with numbers. I think some fellow Taoists are already aware that letting more people enter will reduce the number of opportunities that can be obtained among us. Since that's the case, let's have a battle. We'll enter after proving our strength, and those who don't have the necessary strength will leave, an ancient chaos god agreed. A ring of light began to glow brightly. The expert on the other side was about to descend personally. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared. It was an evil-looking man with a monstrous aura around his body. Upon seeing who it was, the 3 ancestors' expressions changed slightly. Chong frowned and felt that this person was familiar. Long Ao looked at the man and seemed to be deep in thought. He suddenly thought of a fellow. However, this person had disappeared for countless years. Was he actually still alive? Zan, who was standing beside Chu, stared at the man and frowned. She felt that she had heard of this person before when she was young, but she was uncertain. Was that not just a legend? Senior, are you the monster ancestor? She asked hesitantly. Monster ancestor. The experts of the 9 zones were all stunned. Even Yao, she and the others were surprised. There were many kinds of monster races in the 9 zones, and they were usually led by the dragons or the fiery phoenixes. In the past, the heavenly fox race was also a strong monster race. The 3 races had their ancestors, and even the dragons and fiery phoenixes had their ancestors. However, the equally powerful monsters had never heard of the monster ancestor. Yao, Shi, and the others were all considered ancestor-level figures within the 9 zones. However, none of them had heard of the monster ancestor. It seemed that when the monster race first appeared, there were many types. They were ruled by the strongest tribe. Dragons and fiery phoenixes did not consider themselves monsters, but were still nominally the backers of the monster race. Who was the monster ancestor? Yao and Shi had never heard of his existence. Back then, the 3 ancestors had not yet left the 9 zones and entered the chaos. During that period, the demon race was dominated by the dragons, fiery phoenixes, heavenly foxes and the heavenly tigers. They oversaw and divided the power of the monster race. The heavenly fox race was wiped out in the Great Calamity. The heavenly tiger race also suffered major losses during the Great Calamity. From then on, the dragons and fiery phoenixes had been the rulers of the monster race. Together with the demon, immortal and celestial races, they ruled the 9 zones. Why was there a monster ancestor now? You little fox, you actually know me. The monster ancestor looked at Zan and smiled. Zan was stunned. Was he really the legendary monster ancestor? She was a little excited. No matter what, she was still a member of the monster race. When I was young, I read about you in an ancient book. It's rumored that when the world was first created, there was an innate life form who transformed demonic beasts into monsters. Zan said in a low voice. That person was known as the monster ancestor. After that, when we were fighting against the rulers of the 9 zones, the monster ancestor disappeared after killing a ruler. Innate life form from the beginning of the world. The monster race was enlightened by this person. Moreover, he was a participant in the war against the rulers. Many experts of the 9 zones had heard of the legend of the beginning of the 9 zones. That was the era when chaotic beings ruled over the 9 zones. After a long period of rebellion, the era of the rulers finally ended, and the era of the 9 zones and the myriad races began. The 4 great races of immortals, celestials, demons, and monsters ruled the 9 zones then. The 3 ancestors had risen to power during that period. From the looks of it, the monster ancestor was older than they were. I can't believe there's still a junior who remembers me. The monster ancestor smiled and looked at Zan with joy. With a wave of his hand, a treasure that looked like a jade bracelet flew toward Zan. I shall bestow this treasure to you. Zan was extremely excited. Thank you, ancestor. She reached out to receive it and wore it on her wrist. The monster race experts of the 9 zones who were still nearby all paid their respects. Greetings, ancestor. The monster race has declined. The monster ancestor glanced at them and sighed. I remember how powerful they were when I was still around. The group of monster race experts were ashamed. The monster ancestor did not continue. Instead, he looked at the 3 ancestors and smiled. Are you surprised? Haha, not at all. An old monster like you wouldn't die so easily. We were just wondering why you hadn't appeared yet. The immortal ancestor laughed. You're no weaker than the 4 divine beasts of the 9 zones back then, but you disappeared after you fought against the ruler. The celestial ancestor sighed, before asking, I'm curious, why did you suddenly disappear? It was just for a few opportunities. The monster ancestor had no intention of talking about the past. Have the 4 divine beasts not returned? He asked. I can't contact the Azure Dragon, Long Ao replied. The 4 divine beasts have long disappeared into the chaos, the demon ancestor said in a deep voice. The 4 divine beasts of the world were the divine beasts that existed at the beginning of the 9 zones, and were no weaker than them back then. However, the 4 divine beasts had disappeared for a long time. No one knew if they had died. They were divine beasts, so they should not have fallen. However, the world had changed, yet they had not appeared, which was somewhat unusual. The monster ancestor looked at the rings of light, focusing on giant chaos god and the other 2. He smiled. The 9 zones are our world. We were born in this world, so it should belong to us alone. You have come uninvited. It is like an invasion. The expressions of the group of ancient chaos gods turned ugly. The monster ancestor was very arrogant. Before they could speak, the monster ancestor continued, it's not like we don't have guests among you. As guests, you can naturally enter the world. However, without strength, you won't qualify as a guest. Those who think you have the strength to be our guests can come and give it a go. In the end, strength spoke for itself. Do I need to prove my strength? Ancient God Void Destruction asked. He was one of the 3 ancient chaos gods who was on the verge of reaching the Chaos Supreme Realm. The 3 of you have the ability to become our guests. There's no need to prove it, the monster ancestor replied as he glanced at ancient God Void Destruction. That's good. One of the rings of light began to solidify. "I'm here to prove that I can become a guest of the 9 zones," an ancient chaos god said coldly. "Sure, if you can take one of my attacks and the spatial passage doesn't shatter, then you are qualified. What do you say to that?" The monster ancestor raised his hand, and a beastly power appeared. Looking at the gradually condensing ring of light, he continued, "If I break your spatial passage and you can't travel through it, you're out. Does anyone have any objections?" If 2 powerful experts were to fight across the spatial passage, no one would be able to keep it from shattering. However, if it only involved blocking one attack, and maintaining the integrity of the spatial passage, it was not too difficult. Being unable to do this could only mean that one was not strong enough. No objections. The group of ancient chaos gods had no objections. Chuzan looked at the lively situation and chuckled. These experts were doing their own filtering to decide who could and could not enter the divine world. Of course, in the end, it was really for naught. If he did not allow it, who could come in? The monster ancestor was a bit special. He was an innate life form from the beginning of the 9 zones, and the one who had enlightened the monster race. He had awakened the intelligence of the demonic beasts of the 9 zones and turned them into demons. Chuzan was also curious. Why did this monster ancestor suddenly disappear? He was older than the 3 ancestors, and even slightly stronger. Among the former powerful figures of the 9 zones, only the monster ancestor was on par with the 3 ancient chaos gods who were on the verge of reaching the Chaos Supreme Realm. There were a total of 35 rings of light that had appeared so far, and more than half of them would be eliminated. The 4 divine beasts of the world did not appear. It was as if they had disappeared. Chuzan could not help but think of the system's reward back then, the 4 spirit stars chariot. The 4 divine beasts could not have become the 4 protector beasts for his chariot, right? Thinking about this closely, this was entirely possible. Chuzan had not used the 4 spirit stars chariot since he obtained it. Starlight is the path, and 4 spirits is its protector. How awe-inspiring. There probably was not a second person in the entire chaos who could travel in such a manner, right? He was really looking forward to the day that he left the courtyard. At this moment, the monster ancestor had already made his move and launched an attack. It did not shatter the layers of space in the chaos, nor did it create a huge commotion, but it simply traveled directly into the ring of light. Then, the ring of light started to collapse. The ancient chaos god behind it roared in anger, and a terrifying power swept over in an attempt to stabilize the ring of light and offset the power of the monster ancestor. However, his efforts only lasted for about 3 breaths of time. With a bang, the ring of light exploded. The pawn that had spawned the ring of light also crumbled instantly, his Tao path and world dispersing into the chaos. This was a person who had transcended the world creator realm, so he was not truly dead. Perhaps the monster ancestor had shown mercy and deliberately spared his life. However, it would take a long time for that person's Tao path and world to recover, after which, he would be free from his fate as a pawn. It could be said that the monster ancestor had saved him. The monster ancestor shook his head and sighed. That guy's strength was lacking. Next please. The group of experts felt a chill run down their spines as they watched the ring of light collapse. That ancient chaos god had lost the right to enter the divine world. As for whether the other party would come personally, that was not important. After all, those who qualified would work together to ensure their own benefits, keeping the others out. The 3 ancestors all had solemn expressions. The strength of the monster ancestor was beyond their expectations. He had disappeared for countless years, but the moment he reappeared, he had put on a show of unparalleled strength. Demon ancestor, an ancient chaos god said as a ring of light solidified, you and I fought in the past. Today, I'll have a taste of your skills again. He had no confidence in handling the monster ancestor, so he challenged the demon ancestor instead, as he had fought the latter before. The monster ancestor did not say anything. He had eliminated the previous person in one move, so no one in their right mind would choose him. As you wish, the demon ancestor said coldly. Boom. Demonic power filled the sky, and space shattered layer by layer. The demon ancestor's aura was extremely shocking. He raised his hand and threw a punch at the ring of light. This punch was even more overbearing than when he had killed Qin. The ring of light trembled and swayed, as if it would be destroyed at any moment. As for the pawn that was bearing the ring of light circle, his body started cracking and was about to collapse. The power of the demon ancestor was extremely domineering and destructive. A terrifying figure loomed within the ring of light. His power surged, continuously stabilizing the space and neutralizing the power of the demon ancestor. However, he could not protect his pawn in time, and the pawn let out a blood-curdling screech as before crumbling and vanishing. Without an anchor point, the ring of light was far more fragile, and crumbled as well. The ancient chaos god clearly had not expected the demon ancestor to be so powerful. Another person was eliminated. The other ancient chaos gods turned solemn at this sight. The strength of the four ancestors had exceeded their expectations. The immortal ancestor's sleeves fluttered as he looked at the ancient chaos god that was using an immortal race expert as a pawn. If you can take one of my attacks, I will forget about this matter. Come, I also want to know how strong you are. HMPH. The ancient chaos god snorted. The ring of light instantly solidified. One could vaguely see a spatial passage that led to a distant place. A terrifying figure appeared at the other end of the tunnel. Furthermore, this expert had taken the initiative to transmit a wave of energy over to protect the pawn and prevent a repeat of what had happened to the other ancient chaos god earlier. At the same time, a red curved saber appeared in his hand, which was his supreme treasure. The first two ancient chaos gods had not used their supreme treasures out of carelessness and were eliminated. The strength of the immortal ancestor was no weaker than that of the demon ancestor. Therefore, this ancient chaos god was not taking any chances. He was actually very confident that he could block an attack and keep the spatial passage from collapsing. After all, it was only one attack. The immortal ancestor chuckled and waved his sleeves. His sleeves were like the mouth of an abyss, sucking the pawn and ring of light inside. Get lost. The immortal ancestor laughed, and the ring of light and the pawn instantly disappeared into that space. No one knew where they were transported to. Immortal ancestor, you're cheating. The angry roar of the ancient chaos god could be vaguely heard. It was too unexpected. He did not expect that the immortal ancestor would transfer the ring of light and pawn to another place instead of trying to destroy the ring of light. He was caught off guard and fell into the trap. On the other side, the celestial ancestor also made his move, targeting an ancient chaos god that had used a celestial race expert as a pawn. The celestial ancestor's actions were similar to the immortal ancestors. He simply threw the other party into the endless chaos, teleporting them to an unknown place. In an instant, the ancient chaos gods that had targeted the three major races were all eliminated. The rest of the ancient chaos gods were silent. This was within their expectations. No one would stand to see their own forces being turned into pawns by others. Next, the elimination continued. The 30-odd remaining ancient chaos gods were all top existences. However, in the end, only 20 ancient gods of chaos remained. The rest were eliminated. Qin and the others watched silently. Now, the humans were all weaklings and had no right to participate. After the quota was confirmed, the monster ancestor looked at Qin and said, "Open up a passage and let us enter the world." Qin was expressionless. In his heart, however, he was cursing endlessly. Just because the latter was powerful, he made a decision without even asking for his opinion. "I can't," he said coldly. The monster ancestor squinted his eyes, and his voice turned cold. "Can you repeat that?" Qin was expressionless as he looked at the monster ancestor from the corner of his eyes. "The heavenly Tao has its own laws. Although I'm a divine being of the heavenly Tao, I can't remove the power of rejection and open a passage to enter." "Really?" The immortal ancestor frowned. "Why would I lie to you?" Qin said unhappily. He glanced at Huanglong. "Forget it, I don't even know what kind of person he is." Huanglong actually seemed to be very familiar with this group of people, and had even obtained an extremely powerful pawn. Moreover, the expert behind the heavenly Tao should be a terrifying guy, right? Since that's the case, I'll have to try something. The monster ancestor stared at Qin for a long time. Suddenly, he raised his hand and tried to grab Qin. Bang! Qin was too lazy to resist. He also knew that with his current strength, resistance was futile. Therefore, he simply self-destructed. "I'm not trying to kill you. Why did you have to do that? I just wanted to borrow your heavenly Tao fate energy." With a wave of his hand, he tried to collect the remaining fate energy of the heavenly Tao after Qin's self-destruction. However, for some reason, the fate energy of the heavenly Tao could not be gathered in his hands. "Let's break through the power of rejection and enter directly," the demon ancestor coldly said. "It's inappropriate." The immortal ancestor shook his head and said, "The heavenly Tao appeared too suddenly, and if it causes a backlash. The heavenly Tao probably inherited the uniqueness of the great Tao of the 9 zones. Therefore, if the heavenly Tao is damaged significantly, it will probably trigger the appearance of the supreme laws, which would lead to a catastrophe. Even if it causes a backlash, we can withstand it if we share it. It's not a big problem. It's just breaking into the world, not destroying the heavenly Tao, an ancient chaos god said. The immortal ancestor nodded. Then let's do this. The rings of light began to solidify as the ancient chaos gods prepared to come personally. In the small courtyard, Chuzan looked at the rings of light and fell into a state of deep thought. It was easy to stop them from entering. However, this seemed to be inconsistent with his original intention of creating the heavenly Tao. If these experts could break through to the chaos supreme realm under the heavenly Tao, it would undoubtedly strengthen the heavenly Tao by a considerable amount, which would further accelerate the progress of the heavenly Tao law's encroachment into the supreme laws of the chaos. Therefore, he could not completely ban them from entering. However, he could not allow them to enter the world personally either. After all, they were too strong. In any case, in order to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, they first had to remove the obstacle blocking the path of their ascent. Without his help, they would never be able to do so. Chuzan had a plan in mind. Moreover, he felt that the supreme laws of the chaos were somewhat strange, which meant that a Chaos Supreme Realm expert was doing something. It was very likely that they were competing among themselves to see who would be allowed to deal with, and possibly take control of, the heavenly Tao. This was probably why they had not arrived even up till now. In any case, Chuzan knew that their involvement was inevitable. Even if they were Chaos Supreme Realm experts, the heavenly Tao could be considered a variable in the chaos and a source of opportunities. They would definitely want a piece of the pie. They might even join forces and force him to give up a part of his control over the heavenly Tao. Therefore, this plan had to be implemented. If necessary, he could open up the blocked path, allowing Giant Chaos God, Ancient God Void Destruction, and Ancient God Void Slash to immediately break through to Chaos Supreme Realm. Once they did, they would likely attack the one that had obstructed their path for so many years. Thinking this, Chuzan looked at Ding Yu and the others. The Daoyuan realm of the divine world all lacked combat experience. His disciples had reached the peak of cultivation within the divine world, and could no longer find any comparable opponents other than themselves. Actual combat was one of the best ways to improve. Not everyone could become stronger just by staying at home like Chuzan. Fighting strong opponents would stimulate one's talent even more. This was how all of the experts out in the chaos had reached their current levels of strength. There are ancient chaos gods coming from the chaos. Are you interested in fighting with them? Chuzan's voice resounded in the minds of the disciples. I'm willing, Master. I'll go now. Ding Yu was the first to respond. He had an excited look on his face. Master, I've already stepped onto the unparalleled path of the Sword Tao. If there's no woman in my heart, I can definitely kill gods. Chuzan's face darkened. Ding Yu had truly gone off the beaten path. He Yu and the others were all very interested. Master, the ancient chaos gods should be very powerful, right? He Yu asked, puzzled. Although they had already surpassed the 100,000-mile mark, compared to these ancient chaos gods, they were definitely far inferior. In fact, the other party could kill them with a single flick of a finger. Naturally, it will be a battle of equal strength. Chuzan laughed. Are we going to leave this world and fight in the chaos? Wang Luo asked. You'll fight at the edge of the world, on the heavenly Tao battle platform. You guys can prepare now, Chuzan muttered to himself before transmitting his voice to Hong Yuanchu and the others. Are you interested in participating? Hong Yuanchu and the others were naturally happy to do so. This was a good time to test how much of a difference there was between them and the ancient chaos gods. Are there any demons? Mo Tu put his hands together. The demon ancestor is there. Amitabha, I'll go and meet the demon ancestor and show him the power of Buddhism. Chuzan laughed. The demon ancestor would most likely target the Buddhist sect. After all, their power and Tao paths were naturally opposed to each other. Outside the world, the ancient chaos gods began to descend from the rings of light. At this moment, there were some changes in the heavenly Tao, as the power of its laws churned and spread toward the chaos. Then, a huge platform was manifested. It was like a battle arena. The immortal ancestor and the others were stunned. Had the heavenly Tao changed again? The more they thought about it, the more they felt that the appearance of the heavenly Tao was a huge variable. There had to be a great fortune hidden within. Qin reappeared. He was still expressionless. The heavenly Tao has changed. There is only one way to enter the heavenly Tao. What is it? There are geniuses in the divine world who have obtained great fortune from the heavenly Tao, Qin said expressionlessly. Each of you can create an avatar and fight with these geniuses. The winner can obtain fate energy from the heavenly Tao. Only those who have obtained sufficient fate energy can enter the heavenly Tao, and only your avatars can enter. The monster ancestor stared at Qin, and his smile became even more evil. Are you sure this was decided by the heavenly Tao? No matter how one looked at it, this sparring battle did not seem to be something that the heavenly Tao laws would come up with. At the very least, the great Tao of the 9 zones would never have done something like this. It was very likely that it was Qin's doing. If that was the case, then Qin was definitely capable of opening up a passage for everyone to enter the divine wood. Qin remained nonchalant. These rules were definitely set by the existence behind the heavenly Tao, which meant that the heavenly Tao had a master. It was too King terrifying. It felt like he was playing with the entire chaos. I'm just a mere divine being of the heavenly Tao, a mere gatekeeper. How could I have such capabilities? Qin replied. The heavenly Tao sent me a message, he continued. It wants me to tell you that if you want to enter the world, you must follow the rules. The more you win, the more fate energy of the heavenly Tao you will obtain, which will grant you greater chances of obtaining good fortune within the divine world. The monster ancestor and the others frowned. This matter was strange. Qin's strength was indeed lacking, so it made sense that he could not achieve this alone. What if we don't accept the rules? The demon ancestor asked coldly. Qin looked at the demon ancestor and cursed in his heart. If he could defeat this old demon, he would have destroyed him. If you don't follow the rules, you naturally can't enter the world. Don't overestimate yourselves, Qin said coldly. The heavenly Tao is not limited to just what you see. Even if we join forces, we still can't enter the world. The monster ancestor obviously did not believe him. The heavenly Tao looked strong, but they were among the strongest experts within the chaos. There were even those 3, who were on the verge of reaching the Chaos Supreme Realm. Even if one of them was not enough, there were 20 or so of them here. Breaking through and entering the heavenly Tao should not be an issue. Naturally, Qin was full of confidence. He looked at the giant chaos god, ancient god void destruction, and ancient god void / and then said, the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm has been severed. If you want to break through, the only way is to follow the rules. The giant chaos god's eyes suddenly widened. What did you just say? What do you mean by the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm has been severed? He had been stuck at this level for far too long, so long that he had forgotten how many years had passed. Despite being so close, he was unable to succeed no matter what he did. That little barrier was like an insurmountable chasm. It was not only the giant chaos god, but the expressions of all of the experts present changed. The path to the Chaos Supreme Realm had been cut off. How should I know? I'm just a tiny divine being of the heavenly Tao. I'm only acting according to the rules. This is the message sent to me by the heavenly Tao. Qin was expressionless. He continued, if you want to obtain more information, you can only follow the rules. Otherwise, even if you destroy the heavenly Tao, you won't be able to obtain any information, much less break through. Their expressions changed again and again. They had to be cautious when it came to the path toward the Chaos Supreme Realm. Moreover, why did they feel that something was not right? Sparring with the peerless geniuses of the world. Why did it feel like they were being used to train the talents of the divine world? Could it be that the heavenly Tao had a spirit? If the heavenly Tao had a spirit, the eyes of the group of experts flickered, and they were all deep in thought, wondering if they could capture the spirit of heavenly Tao. Qin seemed to have read their minds. I know what you're thinking, he said, just get rid of those unrealistic thoughts. It's best to follow the rules. Otherwise, a calamity will befall you. You need to know that the heavenly Tao has been acknowledged by the supreme laws of the chaos. The giant chaos god and the other experts were silent. They suddenly thought of a problem. If the heavenly Tao really had a spirit and was controlling the heavenly Tao to change as the situation required, would that spirit not be a Chaos Supreme Realm existence? Ancient God Void Destruction suddenly asked, I want to know if the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm has been severed because of the heavenly Tao. When the other experts heard this, their hearts trembled. The enmity of such an act was absolutely irreconcilable. If it was related to the heavenly Tao, then no matter what the consequences were, Ancient God Void Destruction and the other 2 would definitely attack. How long has it been since the heavenly Tao appeared? How long has it been since your path to breaking through was cut off? How could it be related to the heavenly Tao? Qin looked at Ancient God Void Destruction and the other 2. He then looked at the monster ancestor and continued, the heavenly Tao is connected to the supreme laws. Naturally, it knows that the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm has been cut off. If you want to break through and obtain good fortune, you can only follow the rules. That's all I have to say. The decision is up to you. The giant Chaos God and the other two conversed in secret. Indeed, how long had it been since the heavenly Tao appeared? They had been stuck at this stage 1 or 2 eras before, even before the great Tao changed. The three ancient Chaos Gods felt extremely gloomy. The path to the Chaos Supreme Realm was severed. What was the reason behind this? Don't look at me. I don't know the reason. I'm just a little divine being of the heavenly Tao. Qin could tell what they were thinking. All of the experts were silent. Should they follow the rules? If they did not follow the rules, they could either retreat and gain nothing, or try to attack the heavenly Tao and force their way in. Would there be any gains by forcing their way in? Furthermore, was there anything or anyone hidden behind the heavenly Tao? They felt that there was something unusual about this. Then we'll follow the rules, ancient God Void said. From the 9 zones, the 4 ancestors emerged and caught up to many of us ancient chaos gods. It's also a good opportunity to see how talented the current geniuses of the divine world and the heavenly Tao are. The monster ancestor nodded. Following the rules isn't a bad idea. I'm also very curious. What kind of geniuses are there in this new world, and do they have the potential to compete with us? These experts in the chaos had experienced countless battles and crises in order to reach their current levels, so they were not afraid. They were confident that with their current combat experience and abilities, they could take them on. Under such circumstances, no matter how talented the peerless geniuses of the divine world were, they would not be able to defeat them at the same level. The battle will take place at the same cultivation levels, and will be conducted on the heavenly Tao arena over there. Qin pointed at the arena constructed by the power of the heavenly Tao laws. After he finished speaking, his figure flickered and returned to the heavenly Tao. He himself was very curious about the strength of the geniuses of the divine world and how they compared to him in the past. The experts agreeing to spar was within Chuzan's expectations. After all, this was related to the path to the Chaos Supreme Realm, so they had to be careful. Moreover, they were all experts who had lived for countless years. How could they not understand that something was wrong? How could they not sense that there was something or someone behind the heavenly Tao? The battlefield has been prepared. Who will be the first to fight? Chuzan's voice sounded in the minds of Ding Yu and the others. Me. Ding Yu and Xiao Liang were the first to speak. The two of them loved to fight the most. I'm the eldest senior brother. Ding Yu looked at Xiao Liang and said. Xiao Liang's mouth twitched. Forget it, I won't argue with him. They soon arrived at the edge of the heavenly Tao. Hong Yuanchu and the other Daoyuan realm cultivators from the heaven realm also arrived at the edge of the heavenly Tao to watch the battle. When they looked up, they could see that the chaos was filled with countless experts. Even though they were separated by a long distance in the heavenly Tao laws, they could sense the unparalleled power those experts had. Any one of them was stronger than them. Seeing Ding Yu and the others, Hong Yuanchu and the other senior Daoyuan realm cultivators sighed inwardly. They were too monstrous. In just a short time, they had already left them in the dust. It was undeniable that this period of time was an era of great opportunities and great fortune. Before the appearance of the heavenly Tao, they had spent a long time cultivating and only managed to extend their Tao path by a small amount. However, within a short period of time, they had reached the 10,000-mile mark. If they could have cultivated at their current cultivation speed back then, who knew how strong they would be now? Hong Yuanchu and the others could only sigh. They felt pangs of regret for being born in the wrong era. With a sword in his hand, Ding Yu made his entrance as he stood on the heavenly Tao arena. He looked up at the experts in the chaos outside the heavenly Tao. His blood was boiling, and his battle intent was at its peak. His heart was filled with excitement. He was going to have a go at these experts. Although it was a contest of equal strength, it could also be used to measure who was stronger and who was weaker within the same realm. The monster ancestor and the others were also looking at Ding Yu. A human, they frowned slightly. They already knew that the human race was the overlord of the 9 zones. Ever since the Great Tao calamity back then, when all of the races had been expelled from the 9 zones, the human race had taken the opportunity to rise up and rule the 9 zones. Now, the first peerless genius from the divine world was a human. Could it be that all of the peerless geniuses were humans? This person was not strong, having only reached the 110,000-mile mark. However, this also meant that he did not encounter the bottleneck at the limits of the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm. From the looks of it, the heavenly Dao was very different from the great Dao of the 9 zones. It seemed to be easier to cultivate. Did this also mean that they and their Dao paths would be weaker as well? They were slightly surprised though. This human genius seemed to be very young, perhaps not even 100 years old. To have reached such a level at such a young age was rather unbelievable. Was he putting up a front or faking it? In an instant, all of the experts present looked down on him. It seemed that the geniuses of the heavenly Dao were not worth mentioning. Qin was also observing Ding Yu. Ding Yu was much more powerful than he was back then. Qin recalled that when he was at his age, he had only just created the outline of a cultivation technique and was still far from the Daoyuan realm. Of course, the human race of this era could not be compared to his era. At that time, he had to rely on his own comprehension ability to derive a cultivation technique. There were no references, and he had to explore everything by himself. It was not like today, where the human race had their own complete cultivation system and legacy. Ding Yu stood proudly on the fighting ring and nodded at Qin, who was at the edge of the ring, to show his respect. He knew the identity of this person. He was the creator of human cultivation technique and one of the ancestors of the human race. Thanks to this person, the human race finally had a chance to rise. Generations of experts worked hard to create and perfect the cultivation system of the human race, but this man's work was the foundation of it all. I'm Ding Yu, and I cultivate the supreme way of the sword. I've already broken through the 3rd level and reached the realm where there is no woman in my heart, and I can kill a god with my sword. I wonder which senior would like to give me some pointers. As soon as Ding Yu opened his mouth, the expert's expressions became strange. Supreme way of the sword. Moreover, he was very arrogant. He could kill a god with his sword. However, what did the supreme way of the sword have to do with whether or not he had a woman in his heart? The immortal ancestor glanced curiously at Ding Yu. This brat was really crazy. In front of a group of ancient chaos gods, he actually opened his mouth and said that he could kill a god with his sword. He was even more arrogant than the demon ancestor. Chu, Ji, and Sha all had strange expressions. Had the current human race's younger generation already become so insolent and arrogant that they believed that they could kill ancient chaos gods? Their hearts trembled when they heard it. At this moment, Chu really wanted to exclaim, the human race has a worthy successor. However, he thought about how his lacking strength, he restrained himself. If he said those words, he would definitely offend those ancient chaos gods. HMPH, you're so arrogant at such a young age, and you clearly don't know the immensity of the world, an ancient chaos god snorted. I'll go and teach this human brat a lesson. From a ring of light, a figure descended. Of course, it was not his main body, but an avatar. In terms of strength, this avatar had reached the 100,000-mile mark, which meant that it was slightly inferior to Ding Yu. He wanted to defeat Ding Yu despite the gap to teach him a lesson so that he would never look down on ancient chaos gods ever again. Ancient god Qinghong's Dao path was similar to the sword Dao, and it was also powerful and swift in its attacks. He turned into a streak of light and landed on the heavenly Dao arena. You're looking down on me, Ding Yu said angrily. He was so angry. He had always been the one who defeated stronger opponents despite being weaker. The other party had deliberately suppressed his cultivation level, so it was clear that he was looking down on him. Human Junior, I'll teach you that cultivation level isn't everything. You'll learn the price of arrogance, ancient god Qinghong angrily said. He raised his hand, and his spiritual power surged around him. Ding Yu's expression instantly turned serious. Very strong. As expected of an ancient chaos god. However, he was not afraid. So what if he was an ancient chaos god? You are qualified to make me draw my sword. Tell me your name. Ding Yu slowly pulled out his sword. Damn it. You're so arrogant. Ancient god Qinghong was furious. Clang! A sword instantly appeared in his hand, as he unleashed an endless sword rain that swept toward Ding Yu from all directions. Since the other party cultivated the sword Dao, then he would defeat this arrogant kid with a sword. Although ancient god Qinghong did not cultivate the sword Dao, his Dao path was somewhat similar to the sword Dao. Mountain river splitting sword, Ding Yu swung his sword, which radiated vast and mighty sword intent. With a boom, it blasted a massive hole in ancient god Qinghong's attack. Shua, he unleashed another strike that gushed out toward ancient god Qinghong. At this moment, Ding Yu's figure could no longer be seen. The only thing that could be seen was a sword beam that gushed out like a spring. It was mighty and cold. Endless killing intent surged. Ancient God Qing Hong grimaced in surprise. This kid's strength was actually not a facade. The attack was extremely powerful, and actually slightly exceeded the strength of what someone of that cultivation level should have. One had to know that this human kid was not even 100 years old. In the eyes of experts like them, they could tell the difference in age with a single glance. Moreover, Ding Yu did not even bother to hide his age. His original intention was to show off anyway. A sword beam appeared in front of ancient God Qing Hong, also erupting like a fountain. The attacks were similar, but the power of the attacks was different. Boom! The two sword beams collided, causing shockwaves to reverberate in every direction. Ancient God Qing Hong stood unmoving. He wanted to use a similar attack to defeat his opponent. He wanted to let this human brat know that ancient chaos gods could not be taken lightly, and that the power of an ancient chaos god was beyond his imagination. Ding Yu's sword energy changed. The invisible sword intent formed a tornado, and faint cold energy spread in all directions. Threads of sword energy whipped over like a tornado. Ancient God Qing Hong raised an eyebrow. Sword energy threads. This human brat was quite capable, and his sword Dao was not weak. Among the many experts in the chaos, he could be considered above average. However, that was all. If he was really at the same level as Ding Yu, he would have to be careful when facing such a powerful attack, but he was a powerful ancient chaos god, even if he was only an avatar. He did not feel any pressure. His combat experience and abilities were not something that ordinary cultivators of the same level could compare to. He retaliated with a similar attack. Threads of sword-like energy turned into a tornado and swept out. The two similar yet different tornadoes immediately collided with each other. Amidst the rumbling sounds, they continued to exchange blows. Within the tornado, sword beams bloomed one after another. Ding Yu continued to attack, but ancient God Qing Hong was unhurried, not even moving. He responded with similar attacks. Xiao Liang and the others looked at the two sides with a serious expression. They were naturally very clear about Ding Yu's strength. Ancient God Qing Hong's avatar, who was weaker than Ding Yu in terms of cultivation, was not at a disadvantage in this battle. Moreover, he seemed to be at ease, and was copying Ding Yu's attacks. If Ding Yu was defeated by the other party in this way, he would probably suffer a great blow, right? Ancient chaos gods were truly powerful. Hong Yuanchu and the other Daoyuan realm cultivators sighed. Was this the terror of the experts in the chaos? Still, it was a rare opportunity to fight against these powerful beings, so they were all determined to seize this opportunity to train themselves. Chu Zan had been watching the battle. Ding Yu was indeed very strong. His talent in the sword Dao was even more terrifying. However, in the end, he was no match for the slightly weaker ancient god Qing Hong. After all, he was still too inexperienced. It was still fine before the Daoyuan realm, as Ding Yu and the others did not lack battles. However, after reaching the Daoyuan realm, apart from the short battles on the ancient path to the Chaos Abyss, there were no more battles. Despite their cultivation progress and comprehension, some things could only be learned in battle. That being said, Chu Zan was not worried that Ding Yu would be unable to recover if he lost. If he could not even recover from this small blow, what kind of peerless genius would he be? Ding Yu was not a weak person. The more setbacks he faced, the more he would strive to improve and overcome his weakness. In the chaos, the monster ancestor and the others were also watching. Ding Yu's cultivation was not just for show. Chu and the others were also watching. The human race had really produced a peerless genius. They were really going to rise. Although Ding Yu was unable to defeat ancient god Qing Hong, and was being somewhat toyed with, no one looked down on Ding Yu. The gap between their combat experience spanned eras, not years. You humans have an endless stream of geniuses. 677 Ancient God Qing Hong Part 2. She looked at Chu and sighed. In every era, there would be geniuses rising among the human race. However, most of them were short-lived. The 10 ancestors of the human race were not the strongest. It was just that their luck was stronger, and they had more tricks up their sleeves, which allowed them to survive. In the past, there were people who surpassed them in terms of talent, cultivation and combat strength. However, they all ended up short-lived like fireworks. The human race had never lacked geniuses. What they lacked were experts strong enough to protect the growth of the prodigies of the younger generation. How many young geniuses of the human race had Chu and the other ancestors protected? In the end, how many people had managed to develop and grow stronger? Only those lucky and fated ones had managed to do so. This was why the human race was in a constant cycle of ups and downs. This continued until Yang's generation, when the Great Tao Calamity expelled the other races from the 9 zones. Without the suppression of the other races, the human race gradually rose to power and became the overlord of the 9 zones. How difficult had the human race's journey been until then? Chu watched the battle in silence. He had asked himself more than once that if he had the power of the 3 ancestors, would the human race have had such a difficult time? There would definitely be a large number of human geniuses that would suppress the geniuses of the other races. This was why the experts of the various races were apprehensive about the human race, and why they agreed to join forces to suppress the human race. Now, as the overlord of the divine world, the experts wondered just how many experts like Ding Yu existed within the human race. In the chaotic years to come, if the human race was not suppressed, they would definitely become the number 1 race. Many people were shooting glances at the demon ancestor secretly. Back then, the demon race had been the most ruthless and proactive when it came to suppressing the human race. Therefore, the demon ancestor's stance was key to the success of any efforts to suppress the human race. Otherwise, the other races might not be able to succeed. Because of Shi, the celestial race had already wavered. The immortal race remained silent. The dragons and fiery phoenixes had no intention of continuing to target the human race. As for the monsters, even though the monster ancestor had returned, he probably did not have such intentions. Of course, if the experts truly felt threatened by the human race, they might suppress and restrict the human race, but without a vanguard, they would not join forces to deal with the human race. After all, the human race was still very good at dividing the various forces. Moreover, up until now, there had been no experts at the level of the 3 ancestors from the human race. Their strongest expert was Qin, who did not pose a threat. Ding Yu might be monstrously talented, but whether he managed to transcend the world creator realm was uncertain. Even if he did, it did not mean that he would be on par with the 3 ancestors. Thus, while it was undeniable that the human race had already surpassed most of the powerful races, they were still lacking in comparison to the top races of the chaos. In the Heavenly Tao arena, the battle continued. Ding Yu kept changing his attacks, and the power of his attacks was getting stronger and stronger. His sword intent overflowed, and his strength was continuously rising. Even so, ancient god Qing Hong remained unperturbed and responded with similar attacks. He even opened his mouth to attack Ding Yu. Human brat, you must know that the chaos is endless and there are countless geniuses. You might be a genius in this world, but in the expanse of the chaos, you're only above average. We ancient chaos gods stand at the top of the chaos. Do you see now how your arrogance is misplaced? Ancient god Qing Hong had been at ease the entire time, and he was not finding it difficult to deal with Ding Yu. You humans are nothing in the chaos. You should restrain your arrogance and not be too arrogant. Only when you have transcended the world creator realm will you be qualified to see the glory of the experts of the chaos. The current you is actually no different from an ant. My avatar's strength is weaker than yours, but if I wanted to kill you with it, it wouldn't be difficult. Ancient god Qing Hong was in a very good mood as he chattered on and on, constantly belittling and attacking Ding Yu. He wanted to use this opportunity to drag down Ding Yu. Therefore, he did go all out and defeat Ding Yu and destabilize his Tao heart. As for Ding Yu, he was also using ancient god Qing Hong to temper his own sword Tao and improve his comprehension of his sword Tao. He was not bothered by the latter's words at all. As he did so, he could increasingly sense the gap between them. Still, Ding Yu continued to attack. His sword techniques changed, and so did his attacks. As his strength rose, he even managed to comprehend a new sword technique and use it to nullify ancient god Qing Hong's attack. The battle continued. Eventually, ancient god Qing Hong decided to put some pressure on Ding Yu. He suddenly changed his fighting style and began to press forward step by step, constantly shrinking the area Ding Yu could move about in. Not bad. Your mastery of the sword Tao is alright. It's just that your usage of the power of your Tao path is still a little lacking. I'll apply some pressure and see if you can make a breakthrough. If you can't break through, then you're not worthy of being called a genius. I'm looking forward to seeing if you can make it. Ancient god Qing Hong continued to exert more pressure, slowly increasing the number of attacks. It seemed like he was really creating an opportunity for Ding Yu to break through. It was a test to see if he could really be called a peerless genius. Qin frowned slightly. If this continued, if Ding Yu was unable to break through and was constantly suppressed, his Tao heart would probably collapse. It might even affect his cultivation foundation and his sword Tao. He might even have the thought of abandoning the sword Dao and switching to another path. Once that happened, he would be trapped in a vicious cycle and might end up crippled. He would be unable to advance any further, and his cultivation level might even regress. In the history of the chaos, many geniuses had suffered such a blow, but only a few were able to overcome this setback. Moreover, even if they did, they would waste a long time doing so, and would be left behind by their peers, and relegated to becoming one of the weaker experts. Qin had once encountered such a genius. In fact, he had personally destroyed that genius' self-belief and ruined that person's future as a cultivator. He looked at Ding Yu. He saw that Ding Yu was already constantly changing his sword techniques. It was as if he wanted to find a powerful sword technique to break out of this situation. If he could not find a way to break out of this situation, would his belief waver? Qin could not help but worry. However, when he saw Ding Yu's expression and cold gaze, which showed no signs of wavering, he heaved a sigh of relief. Ancient God Qing Hong continued to press, chuckling as he did so. He was even trying to persuade Ding Yu to give up on the sword Dao, promising to teach him a superior path. At this moment, although Ancient God Qing Hong seemed relaxed, he was actually feeling the pressure. Ding Yu's progress was very fast. Kid, this time I'll force you to the left. You're courting death. Ancient God Qing Hong chuckled as he continued to attack, the power of his Dao path swirling in the air as it condensed a powerful attack. Ding Yu was forced to retreat to the left. 678 Ancient God Qing Hong Part 3. Ancient God Qing Hong's smile grew even more dazzling. The spectators were all silent. The monster ancestor and the other experts silently watched the battle. Were Ancient God Qing Hong's actions a test? Would beating a peerless genius to the point of self-doubt lead to something? Would they be able to learn something from this? This time, I'm going to force you to the right. Ancient God Qing Hong smiled as he forced Ding Yu to the right this time. Come, I'll let you move forward a little now. He relaxed his offensive, allowing Ding Yu to take a few steps forward. Now, I'm asking you to back off again. He instantly increased the frequency of his attacks, forcing Ding Yu to retreat. Ancient God Qing Hong smiled as he unhurriedly continued to push Ding Yu around. Xiao Liang frowned as he watched. The difference in power is too great. Hong Yuanshu sighed. That person is too much. Kun, he snorted. He's trying to strike at Ding Yu's Dao heart, He Yu said. She looked at Hong Yuanshu and the others. Everyone, you must guard your Dao hearts. If you lack confidence in your beliefs and feel that your Dao hearts will be shaken in such a situation, then don't get involved. Hong Yuanshu and the rest felt their hearts skip a beat. Once one's faith wavered, once one's Dao heart was in chaos. How could they continue to cultivate and comprehend the heavenly Dao? My Dao heart is indomitable, so I'm not afraid. Hong Yuanshu was very confident. He only looked at Ding Yu worriedly and asked, will there be any problems for Daoist Ding? Don't worry, there won't be any problems, Wang Luo chuckled. That person is toying with him, but Ding Yu is also holding back. The outcome is about to be decided. Xiao Liang was also very happy. He was Ding Yu's most frequent sparring partner, so he understood the latter very well. It seemed like Ding Yu was being pushed around by Ancient God Qing Hong, but Ding Yu was playing along too. He was showing weakness to the enemy in order to look for an opportunity. When the time was right, Ancient God Qing Hong's carelessness would definitely result in a great loss. Little brat, are you trying to get closer to me? Ancient God Qing Hong chuckled as he looked at Ding Yu. Then how about I do as you wish? Come, I'll let you get closer. In an instant, he relaxed his attacks and allowed Ding Yu to approach him. Then, he started to attack again. Be careful, I'm going to force you back. Boom, the attacks instantly increased explosively, forcing Ding Yu to retreat. Again, I'll give you another chance to get closer to me. Ding Yu once again closed in. Pay attention, Ancient God Qing Hong chuckled and was just about to force Ding Yu back again when Ding Yu thrust his sword. It was no different from his previous attacks, so Ancient God Qing Hong did not react immediately. However, at this moment, a terrifying sense of danger arose in his heart. Before he could react, a sword beam suddenly appeared in front of his chest. This attack actually ignored time and space and instantly appeared in front of him soundlessly. Boundless Destruction Sword, Ding Yu sneered. Who did he think he was toying with? I'll give you a ruthless wake-up call. Do you really think that I am a person who can be easily bullied? Trying to shake my Dao heart? I have cultivated the supreme way of the sword and mastered all 3 levels. Today, I'll slaughter an ancient chaos god. The change had come too suddenly. The crisis had arrived too quickly. Ancient God Qing Hong was careless, and had relaxed his defenses. Even though he had fought countless battles and lived for a long time. Even though he was extremely experienced in dealing with enemies. Even though he had reversed the situation countless times in crisis. This time around, he was unable to do much against the boundless destruction sword. He only had time to gather the power of his Tao path to block the blow. However, was the boundless destruction sword something that could be blocked so easily? PFF'd. The sword pierced his heart. Whoosh, whoosh. Then, 2 more sword beams suddenly appeared in front of his head. PFF'd. Ancient God Qing Hong's avatar was severely injured and immediately began to fade. He had a look of disbelief on his face. He was actually defeated. Ancient God Qing Hong had an extremely nasty expression on his face. What a humiliation. Even though it was just his avatar, being defeated by a junior many eras younger than he was utterly humiliating. In retrospect, he was the one who had been fooled. The battle had shifted too quickly. The monster ancestor and the other experts were all stunned. They had originally thought that Ancient God Qing Hong would be able to deal with this opponent with ease. Seeing him defeated was not something they had anticipated, and it made him look like a clown. Interesting. The monster ancestor chuckled. This human genius seemed to be quite cunning, and had tricked Ancient God Qing Hong. Bang, bang, Ancient God Qing Hong's avatar suddenly exploded and vanished, stunning everyone. After Ding Yu severely injured the avatar, he did not continue to attack. Why did the avatar suddenly explode and disappear? Did Ancient God Qing Hong self-destructed out of rage? Everyone looked toward the ring of light where Ancient God Qing Hong was. However, they did not receive any response from the other party. What the experts did not know was that Ancient God Qing Hong's face was extremely grave. 679 Ancient God Star Shaker Part 1. Losing his avatar did not matter. However, a part of the power of his Tao path and fate energy that he had used to condense the avatar had actually been absorbed by the heavenly Tao. If he won, he would obtain the fate energy of the heavenly Tao. If he lost, it seemed that he would lose what he had invested into his avatar as well. This matter was unusual. What would happen if he obtained the fate energy of the heavenly Tao? Would there be any problems? Ancient God Qing Hong's expression was grave, but he did not immediately create another avatar to seek revenge. Instead, he said, I was careless and lost to a surprise attack. Fellow Taoists, who wants to fight next? With the lesson learned from Ancient God Qing Hong, the others would not be so careless. After Ding Yuan, he had already left the heavenly Tao arena. He wanted to digest the experience and insights he had gained from this battle. Your disciple, Ding Yu, defeated the avatar of an ancient chaos god. You have been rewarded with 100 years worth of chaos supreme realm cultivation. Ding Yu had triggered the system's reward. Chu Zan was overjoyed. This was an unexpected harvest. On a whim, he had chosen to use the ancient chaos gods to train his disciples, but had received a chance to receive many windfalls. 100 years worth of cultivation was not a small number, even if he was only getting stronger passively now. After receiving the reward, the embryonic supreme laws in the 3,000 chaos bodies of creation grew by a small amount. Chu Zan's strength had clearly increased. In addition, after defeating the ancient chaos god's avatar, everything used to condense the avatar was absorbed by the heavenly Tao, strengthening it. If he could obtain enough of fate energy from the ancient chaos gods, perhaps the heavenly Tao would also be able to give birth to ancient chaos gods in the future. The second person to stand on the heavenly Tao arena was not another one of Chu Zan's disciples, but Hong Yuanchu. Let me try. I want to see what an ancient chaos god is capable of. I'm prepared to lose. Hong Yuanchu stood on the heavenly Tao arena. Chu was taken aback. Hong's descendant. This person was one of the geniuses who led the human race to rise up during the latest era of the 9 zones. He had already reached the 10,000-mile mark. To Chu's knowledge, this person was far weaker and should not have reached this cultivation level anytime soon. This was unexpected. Although he could not compare to Ding Yu's monstrous talent, and he could not be considered a genius, taking into account the circumstances of the period during which he had cultivated, this level of strength was respectable. If one's talent was lacking, they would not be able to break through to the Daoyuan realm at all after the last great Tao calamity. This junior is Hong Yuanchu. Which senior would like to give me some pointers? Hong Yuanchu. Some of the powerful figures of the 9 zones were not unfamiliar with this person. He was the one who had led the human race to its rise. If he had not been born in the era after the last great Tao calamity changed the world, he would most likely have become the 11th ancestor of the human race. A ring of light condensed. An ancient chaos god with eyes like stars walked out. Ancient god Star Shaker. The avatar's strength was on par with Hong Yuanchu's. Without another word, ancient god Star Shaker descended upon the heavenly Tao arena. Junior, you can make your move. As a senior and an ancient chaos god, he still had to maintain the corresponding etiquette. I won't be polite then, senior. Hong Tuanchu took a deep breath. A ray of light appeared above his head, and his Tao path condensed around him. With a saber and a sword in each hand, the dazzling saber and sword beams were unleashed. Boom! It was an explosion of bright lights. The saber seemed to be able to destroy the sky, while the sword seemed like a wave that would flood the earth. Hong Yuanchu had led the rise of the human race, suppressing Mo Tu and the other Daoyuan realm experts of the other races in the process, so he naturally had his own strengths. His combat strength was not weak. However, his opponent was an ancient chaos god. Even though it was just an avatar with similar strength, it was not something that ordinary Daoyuan realm cultivators could compare to. A huge star appeared in the sky, which seemed to be condensed from ancient god Star Shaker's Tao path. The power of his Tao path surged, and transformed into all kinds of attacks. Like a violent storm, the attack poured down in torrents. Hong Yuanchu's attack was instantly destroyed. Hong Yuanchu did not panic. The saber and the sword became one instantly, and a purple ray of light emerged. It looked like the purple ray of light from the beginning of the world. This was a Tao path secret technique that he had created when he had meditated upon the supreme laws of the chaos. It was the first time he had used it. The other Daoyuan realm cultivators, who were watching the battle, all had serious expressions. Especially Mo Tu, as he and Hong Yuanchu had been longtime enemies. Back when he was still a demon, he had fought with Hong Yuanchu many times, but had lost every time. After becoming a Buddhist, he was full of confidence that he could suppress Hong Yuanchu. However, seeing this Tao path secret technique, he had second thoughts. Oh, ancient god Star Shaker raised an eyebrow. You have some ability. The huge star suddenly dispersed and instantly transformed into 81 stars, revolving around him. Each star released the power of his Tao path and unleashed an attack. Each attack was different. Hong, you have a worthy successor, Chu said, pleased. Indeed, Sha nodded his head. Hong Yuanchu was defeated in the end. However, this Tao path secret technique was enough to prove that he had the potential to reach the world creator realm, and perhaps even transcend it. The one who could reach the world creator realm could be considered experts in the chaos. His ancestor, Hong, was also a world creator realm expert. Boom! As expected, ancient god Star Shaker, who had not been careless, won. Hong Yuanchu spat out blood and retreated. The remaining power of ancient god Star Shaker's attack was neutralized by the heavenly Tao. I've lost. Thank you for your guidance, senior. Hong Yuanchu cupped his fists. Ancient god Star Shaker had a rather good impression of him. After all, no one would hit a smiling face. He was not like Ding Yu, who had professed that he wanted to kill a god as he opened his mouth. He was extremely arrogant. With your talent, it shouldn't be a problem for you to break through and become a world creator realm cultivator. As for whether or not you can transcend the world creator realm, that depends on your luck. Hong Yuanchu cupped his hands and left the arena. World creator realm, that was too far away. He had not even reached the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm. He had to stay focused and grounded. After ancient god Star Shaker's victory, he instantly sensed a bolt of fate energy descend upon his avatar. In a trance, he seemed to have seen the supreme laws. It was a little blurry and he could not seem to see them clearly. Could it be that he had not obtained enough fate energy from the heavenly Tao? Ancient god Star Shaker did not leave the heavenly Tao arena. Who else wants to compete? Kun he walked out. He was even weaker than Hong Yuanchu, and even weaker than ancient god Star Shaker's avatar. For this reason, ancient god Star Shaker sealed off a portion of his cultivation and lowered it to Kunhe's level. In battle, Kunhe was quickly defeated. He was considered an ordinary Daoyuan realm cultivator, and there was nothing to shout about him. After defeating Kunhe, ancient god Star Shaker obtained another bolt of fate energy. However, it was less than when he defeated Hong Yuanchu. He vaguely saw the supreme laws again, but they were still blurry. Continue. The next one was Bing Luoxing. Finally, it was no longer a human challenger. Bing Luoxing's strength was comparable to Hong Yuanchu's. In the end, she was also defeated. After defeating the 3 Daoyuan realm cultivators, ancient god Star Shaker did not continue to challenge more. Instead, he returned his avatar to his main body. He wanted to figure out what was so special about the heavenly Tao and its fate energy. When he obtained the fate energy of the heavenly Tao, he could vaguely see the supreme laws. It seemed that the greater the amount of the heavenly Tao's fate energy one obtained, the clearer one could see the supreme laws. "What's going on with your avatar, Star Shaker?" Ancient God Qing Hong asked. Ancient God Star Shaker's avatar did not seem to have changed much. The other experts could not sense anything different about it even after it obtained the heavenly Tao's fate energy. Ancient God Star Shaker naturally would not give them an honest answer. "There's nothing special for now." He shook his head, and his avatar stepped through the ring of light and returned to his main body. However, he did not merge the avatar with his main body, as he was afraid that there would be a problem. His main body kept investigating his avatar, trying to analyze the uniqueness of the heavenly Tao's fate energy to decipher why it could vaguely see the supreme laws. As he investigated, ancient god Star Shaker's main body seemed to also be able to vaguely see the supreme laws. Fate energy to decipher why it could vaguely see the supreme laws. As he investigated, ancient god Star Shaker's main body seemed to also be able to vaguely see that the fate energy of the heavenly Tao was connected to the supreme laws. Because there was too little of the heavenly Tao's fate energy, he was unable to see anything clearly. At that moment, his expression changed. He had to obtain more of the heavenly Tao's fate energy. Dispelled this thought, he even had the thought of devouring the fate energy of the heavenly Tao directly, but immediately the heavenly Tao was clearly extraordinary. If he were to devour its fate energy directly, he would definitely encounter some unknown calamity, regardless of whether he succeeded or not. Since the fate energy of the heavenly Tao was connected to the supreme laws, devouring it would definitely violate the supreme laws and attract a great calamity. Only by following the rules would he be able to approach this matter safely.